On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very special treat. He's the ultramarathon runner, known for pushing his body and mind to inconceivable limits. He's an ESPN ESPY award winner and Competitor Magazine Endurance Athlete of the Year winner in 2005, 06, and 08. He conquered 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 consecutive days, finishing strong in the Big Apple, New York City. He's a badass endurance athlete, speaker, philanthropist, and New York Times best-selling author of one of my personal favorite books, Ultramarathon Man. Time magazine named him one of the 100 most influential people in the world. He's just an overall juggernaut in all facets of life and a phenomenal human being. Please welcome the legendary Dean Karnazes. How you doing, Dean?
I don't know if I can live up to that introduction, but thank you. That was very gracious.
I did good by you?
I think I owe you something for that. Yeah.
Good. Well, it's all true. You wrote it, essentially, right?
My mom did. That was my mom.
Like I was saying before we went off air, I'm such a big fan, and my brand is really taking off. But one of the most exciting things that I get to do is to have people on the podcast that have played major roles in my life and made a major impact. And you're that type of guy for me. And I just want to let you know that your inspiring journey lit a fire in me. I was always a weightlifter and so forth, never really into running, so to speak. And a few years back, I picked up your book and I went from being unable to run a mile without stopping to running 4 marathons that same year. And right now I'm gearing up for Chicago, where I expect a PR. So I want to acknowledge you for that and just let you know that your journey is so inspiring. I can't wait for the audience to hear it. You have my word. We will absolutely manufacture magic together here today.
Well, I'm honored to play a small part, but, truthfully, the hard work, the discipline, the training, you did all that stuff. I mean, you can't fake your way to the finish line of a marathon as you learned. So, I was, maybe a small influence, in that journey of yours, but right on. And so Chicago week number 5, what time are you shooting for?
Great question. So I ran 4 in 2019. I PR'd in November in Philly in the pouring rain with 3:39, which for me was massive. That was a big moonshot because I'd never been a runner so far. I was proud of that. But ultimately, a lot's changed in the last couple of years, and I'm looking to do something a little weird. I said my goal is to break 3:30, but I think I could do much better than that.
Yeah, well, let me ask you. You still, I mean, you were big, you were ripped. Are you still, lifting heavy, or what's your weight routine like?
It's funny. Everyone always says to me, "You don't look like a marathon runner with that physique," and because I always lifted weights for so long. So now I run 4 days a week, actually 5 now, as we're getting closer to Chicago. The other 3 days I cross train. I go upstairs to the gym and just clang and bang and maintain the muscle and so forth.
So all body weight.
Yeah. Well, no, I use weights upstairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit more bulky than the average runner as well. And,
Yes.
Bulk is a little bit slower for running, but it's worth the trade-off. I mean, to me, for longevity and injury prevention, just all overall health, I think it helps to have some bulk. So it slows you down a bit, but I think the trade-off's well worth it.
100% agree with you. Before we dive deep, because the audience loves to get a bit of the journey and the background story, we'll definitely get there. But we're going to start off. We're going to have a little fun. We're going to get a little weird. You ready for me, Dean?
I hope so. We'll see. Yeah.
Dean, what is your superpower? It may or may not be an obvious one. I'm not sure.
Wow. So chocolate covered espresso beans.
Well, what's the deal with those?
Someone gave this to me during the first time I ran a 50-mile race. And this is back in, I don't want to say how old I am, but this is back in 1993. And I don't know, there was something about the caffeine, I guess, that you're just ingesting that kind of, lingers around in your system. So it supercharged me and got me through the finish line.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just skimming through the book again yesterday because, number one, obviously I'm a fan, but preparation breeds confidence, and I want to give you the respect you deserve. And I saw you saying somewhere at the end of the book, like, you're a man. Like, you could give up alcohol and coffee, but sometimes you like to live a little, but coffee is really, a serious guilty pleasure for you. And sometimes you'll do it just to prove to yourself that you're not addicted to caffeine, but you love a good cup of coffee in the morning, and so do I.
Yeah, I mean, I hate being addicted to anything, and so I quit coffee one time just to prove I could do it, and I did it, and I'm like, all right, well, life is a little bit better with it, so might as well just go back to it. So
100% agree with that one.
Yeah.
Dean, what are 3 words to describe you?
Focused, disciplined, and warm-hearted.
Love that. Yeah. Makes perfect sense to me, knowing your journey. What's something very interesting about you that a lot of people might not know?
My name is not Dean.
It's not?
No.
What is it?
It's Constantine. Yeah, like if people, when I go to the airport with people and they look at my passport, they're like, "Hold it, who's this guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's me. I don't even know how I got the nickname Dean. I literally do not know how I ended up being called Dean, but that's not my name."
You have an unbelievable poker face too. I wasn't sure if you were kidding just there. Dead serious. I love it.
Yeah, Constantine Nicholas Karnazes.
Both great.
A good Irish name, right?
Yeah, understood. When was the last time, Dean, you had an unbelievable belly laugh?
I think last night, actually. We watched, my folks are in town, and we watched the NBA finals.
I was watching.
Hearing the interview with Giannis afterwards, because I'm 100% Greek, and my mom and dad are Greek, and hearing
you must love him.
Yeah, hearing his accent when he started talking, he has such a thick Greek accent, and I just thought that is just so bizarre, because it's so unheard of to have a Greek accent, let alone on the MVP of the NBA. It was just an amazing moment. Yeah.
That was an amazing moment. What a special player, and so well deserved. I didn't think he was going to come back from that knee injury. Not a doctor per se, but unbelievable, remarkable accomplishment. And he's still young. He's got a whole career ahead of him.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I know where he came from in Greece, and it's amazing. His story is amazing. It's almost like a fairy tale.
Yeah, I love that. Dean, you've been through so much, so many highs, so many unbelievable accomplishments, obviously challenges as well. At this point of your life, what makes you feel most alive?
Adventure. Yeah, adventure. I mean, that's why COVID has been so rough for me, because, I've been on all 7 continents twice. And, to me, wandering is my lifeblood. And, when that was kind of turned off with the pandemic, it's been rough. But I'll tell you that on Friday, a couple of days from now, I'm flying to Australia to run across Australia. So it's back on, baby. Yeah.
Back on, baby. Of course you are. What does that race look like?
It's 1,000 miles from a place called Broken Hill, which is kind of in the middle of Australia, to the coast. So it's the race is called 1,000 miles to light, kind of symbolic in that, we're kind of crawling out of the darkness into the light. But it also finishes when you touch the Byron Bay Lighthouse. So that signifies the finish of this 1,000-mile run.
That's beautiful. That's so cool. Chatting with you just for a couple of minutes is very humbling, because here I am stepping out of my comfort zone, running 4 marathons in 1 year, and now gearing up for another one. And you're gearing up for 1,000 miles. Unbelievable stuff.
Well, I mean, yeah, just running 1 marathon is more than 99.9% of the population.
That's
so,
right.
I mean, what you're doing is amazing. And, you're just talking to a guy that has kind of taken that whole theme to the limit. But, most people will never run a marathon. Most people will never run a 10K, so yeah, bravo to you.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. We'll do one more last weird one, and then we'll dive into the journey a little bit. Dean, what is your definition of success?
Being the best you that you can be. So living up to your potential. And I think my definition of a sin is not living up to your potential.
That was beautiful. I ask a lot of people that, a lot of big names, celebrities and so forth, but the way you articulated that, so simple and so heartfelt and so effective. So true. Like, my biggest thing, right? My biggest fear, so to speak, is to not leave the legacy that I know I'm capable of leaving, or not leaving a dent in the universe, or making that impact. So you talk about potential, right on. Love that. I told you we jump around a little bit. The audience is obsessed with you, and they always want to hear about the journey. You grew up in California, right?
California, born and bred. Yep.
Yeah. And then you started running early, like at the age of 6?
Yeah, I started running home from kindergarten. I mean, those are my earliest childhood recollections. You know, we all have that like first thing we remember in our life. And literally the first thing I remember is running home from school when I was 6 years old.
Why were you running home?
It was a weird dynamic. I mean, I was the oldest child, and when my youngest sibling, my daughter, came along, she was number 3, and my dad, he was working 2 jobs. You know, we grew up in LA, and he was in a working class family, and my mom was having a hard time getting me home from school because she had a young baby at the house. So I wanted to take some stress off of her, so I just told her I'd run, and she was, you know, at first like, really, you're going to do that? And she let me do it. And then I started to love it. I mean, you know, I think the way we raise kids is counterintuitive. I mean, you know, we tell a young boy to sit still and pay attention. And what does a 6-year-old boy want to do? You know, not pay attention and run wild. So as soon as the bell went off, I'm like, I'm free, baby. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And I would just take off.
And then immediately, were you a little bit addicted to that feeling of running, or you didn't really put it together yet?
I think it was more than just I don't know if there's the runner's high, but it was just the freedom of running. You know, I no longer had to sit in a classroom. You know, I could just roam at my own will. And also I just remember like I ran through a park to get home. And I remember the leaves changing colors, like when the season changed. And I remember ducks, you know, on this lake. I just remember relating to the world at 6 miles an hour, you know, as I was running. And that's just kind of how that became my reality.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And there's something so tranquil about a run, right? And I know some people don't feel that way. Some people are like, I don't know how you do it. Like, I hate running. But when you really just like forget everything, it's just you, like, not to sound too spiritual, but you, God, and the pavement, or, you know, whoever, whatever the case may be. It really is a beautiful, tranquil thing. I love that. By age 12, you ready going on 40-mile bike rides?
Yeah. It was probably a little bit more than 40 miles because I got lost along the way. I decided I was going to ride my bike to my grandparents' house. And they were, I think, you know, if you took a car, they were about 40 miles away. But, you know, I somehow made it. I was covered. I'll never forget. I was covered in road grime when I showed up. And it was like a 10-hour ride. And it was, you know, it wasn't a sophisticated bike. It was like a Schwinn, you know, single speed with a banana seat, you know. It was one of the
A Schwinn with the banana. That's great.
Yeah. And yeah, 12 years old, and I made it. Yeah.
Understood. And then eventually we get to high school. I know we're jumping around a little bit, but at some point we get to high school, and then you start running like for the school, right?
Yeah. I started running cross country when I was a freshman. So at 14, we won you know, the championships of my cross country team. And I was on the varsity when I was 14.
That's impressive. Yeah.
Well,
And
I
then,
mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, you know, I was getting my ass kicked because, you know, I was racing against kids who were 18. They were, you know, obviously much stronger than I was, but
sure.
the team, you know, it was a team ranking. And so every team member had to hold their own. And I just remember being like so proud that we won because it was of my, you know, I wasn't in first place, but whatever place I came in, it was enough to get our team standings to the top.
Yeah. I love that. I admire that about you. Not sure which school it was. I wanted to ask you. I know you didn't get along with one of your track coaches.
Yeah, I mean, after cross country, like the cross country coach he was like a mentor sage. You know, he told me, he said, don't run with your legs, run with your heart. And, you know, cross country, we were kind of like a bunch of misfits. You know, we were running on trails. The court, you know, the race distance was about 2.5 miles. You know, we didn't wear matching uniforms. You know, we were kind of grungy. Like I was spending half my time surfing. I was racing in board shorts.
Yeah.
And then, you know, then all my cross country guys are like, nah, we hate the track guys. Like, we're not going out for track. And I wanted to keep running. So I went out for track, and it was like, everyone had a perfectly clean uniform on. And the coach was like a dictator, you know, he's just yelling at me, you know, banging on his clipboard. And I decided I don't need this. Like, I don't need to run around in circles on a man-made structure. Like I like cross country because you're just running off on the trails. So
Yeah.
hung up my shoes. Yeah.
And then you stopped for about 15 years.
Yeah. I just thought running was boring. It was a waste of time. No running at all. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great to think about now. Obviously, most of the audience is familiar with you and your journey, and to think that connecting the dots, looking backwards, there was a 15-year gap in there where you weren't doing this thing. That kind of made you a legend. Obviously, other reasons too, but that's very interesting to me. And then eventually, you get back into it. How did that come about?
Well, after I somehow graduated from high school, I wasn't the best student, but I made it through high school, and I got into college. So I went to college, and then I went to graduate school, and then I thought I needed a business degree. So I went into business school and got an MBA, and I had a very comfortable, job in San Francisco, with all the perks, stock options, company car, a fat paycheck, bonuses, all that stuff. And on the night of my 30th birthday, I was in a bar in San Francisco doing with a lot of people do on their 30th birthday. I mean, they're drinking with my buddies. And at midnight, I tell them I'm leaving. And they say, well, hold it. It's your 30th birthday. Let's have another round of tequila to celebrate. And I said, no, I'm going to go run 30 miles to celebrate instead. And they looked at me and they said, but you're not even a runner. You're drunk. I said, yeah, I'm drunk, but I'm still going to do it. And I walked out of the bar, and I'll never forget, I didn't own running gear, but I had on these comfortable silk boxer shorts, like these silk underwear. So I peeled off my pants and just threw them down the alleyway and started stumbling into the night, heading south. I knew there was a town called Half Moon Bay that was 30 miles away. And I set my sights on running to Half Moon Bay. And I say running, but I mean, it was hobbling. It was, shuffling. And, I sobered up about halfway through, and I thought, what the hell am I doing? This is ridiculous, but it just felt right. And so I ran all night. It took me 7.5 hours. And that night forever changed the course of my life.
Yeah. What do you think led up to that mentally at the bar for you to say to yourself, I know what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go run 30 miles.
I think it was just boredom. I think that I followed the prescription for happiness. In our society, how do you achieve happiness? You get a good education, you get a good job, you make a lot of money, and you're going to be happy. And I did all those things, and I was miserable.
Same.
Yeah, there was just no struggle. There's no life in my life. It all came so easy. And I just remember the intensity of running. How I just it used to make my heart beat, really beat and bring me, so much joy. And I hadn't felt that joy in so many years. And I think that, I kind of had a midlife crisis. And, the other thing is, this woman starts hitting on me in this bar, and I'm happily married. I married my high school sweetheart. And I'm thinking, is this what your life's going to be? You're going to wake up at 50, fat and bald and rich and driving a red sports car on your third wife. Is that really the life you want to lead? And it just, I had that visual picture in my mind. It just repulsed me. So I literally told this girl I was going to go use the bathroom. Like, I'm going to go run to the bathroom. And I just walked out of the bar and started running.
Yeah. I can relate to everything you're saying. This is hitting home for me because I also recently left Wall Street. I had my own business and so forth. And I say this very humbly, very successful, wealth and all that, but it left a hole in my stomach. Like, I was so unfulfilled and uninspired. And it took the pandemic for me to make a major pivot and go all in on my passion and purpose, which is helping people revamp their mindsets, the masterminds, and obviously the podcast. And, I'm happy every single day. Like, I'm living in such a state of gratitude because I love this stuff. I'm obsessed with it. Talking to you here now, and we'll put this on YouTube too, so the audience will see, but like, you need a surgeon to remove the smile from my face. I love this stuff. I love talking about the inspiration and stuff. So I can definitely relate to what you're just saying. For the audience, it's so valuable. Like, society paints a certain picture of what's perceived to be happy or successful. But if you know in your heart of hearts, it's not the case, look a different direction and kind of identify what does fuel your soul and so forth. Because not to sound too dramatic, but we don't get to do this twice. There's no sequel. You're one shot at this thing called life.
Yeah, brother, I mean, I'm having deja vu talking to you because I don't know. I have a good friend. His name's Jesse Itzer. And I don't know if you know Jesse Itzler, but have I, had I not be looking at your face on Zoom, I would think I'm interviewing with Jesse. I mean, you guys are cut from the same cloth. I mean, it's amazing.
It's a compliment. I like that guy. Big fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both you guys are good guys. Yeah.
Thank you, Dean. I appreciate that. Received. So after that 30-mile run, what then? Like, what was your frame of mind? Like, all right, let's get a little nuts with this, or where did you go from there?
No, I mean, I thought, shit, I just ran further than a marathon. Like, I thought maybe I ran further than anyone had ever run before. I had no idea, and I was so naive. And so I started running, out to like the Golden Gate Bridge, where because I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I thought it was pretty badass. And one day I was running home. I'll never forget. There's this big hill. It's called Lover's Lane, but it's a big climb. It's about a 400-foot climb. And as I'm running up this hill, these two guys blow by me. I mean, they just smoke me. And no one ever passed me. Like, I was like prided myself on, like, I'm the fastest guy out here. These guys were like a different species. And I thought, shit, that's insane. And I wanted to kind of ask them what they were all about, but they just got over the top of the crest of the hill and disappeared. And I thought, oh, damn. Well, I got up to the crest of the hill, and those guys are there doing push-ups. And I just, they weren't very talkative, but I finally got out of them that they were training to do a 50-mile run.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, there's no way. I said, where are the campgrounds, or where are the hotels? How many days does it take? And the guy just says, no, buddy, the gun goes off and you start running, and, you don't stop in a hotel. You stop when you reach the finish line. And then they just bolted off. And I thought, that's the craziest damn thing I've ever heard of, a 50-mile foot race. I got to try this. Like, I got to figure this out and go do it. So I went and did this 50-mile race, and it laid me out. I mean, it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. And I somehow finished. And I'll never forget, I was in the tent, the finisher's tent afterward, like wrapped in this Mylar blanket, just destroyed. And I see those two guys, and they're high-fiving each other. And I hear him say, yeah, we qualified. I'm kind of like, what'd you qualify for? The insane asylum? I mean, what the hell? And the guy's like, no, we qualified for the Western States 100-mile endurance run. And I'm like, hold it. You can run twice as far? Like, 100 miles? And the guy's like, yeah, it starts at the base of a ski resort, and you run through the Sierra Nevada, and you run through snowfields, you cross a river in the middle of the night. I'm like, what do you mean middle of the night?
It's basically the appetizer.
Yeah, the 50-mile was nothing. He's like, you run straight through the night. You put on a headlamp, and I can't believe what these guys are telling me. And I'll never forget this. The last thing they said as they're walking away is, hey, buddy, you qualified as well. And when he said that, I'm like, I will never live down those words. I just knew at that instant, unless I try this, I will never live down those words. And I thought, okay, here it goes. You got to sign up for a 100-miler. And that was back in 1993.
Before this stuff was like trendy.
Before it's popular. Yeah.
That's crazy. Off topic real quick. Have you ever been seriously injured?
Knock on wood, knock on the side of my head. I've never had an injury of any sort. I mean, well, I've lost toenails, but what runner hasn't? But that's the worst injury I've ever had.
I'll never forget my first marathon in New York City. Just seeing some of the signs that the New Yorkers post up, and one of them stuck out to me, like, all good toenails go to heaven. I was dying. Sure enough, lost a toenail in that race. No big deal.
Yeah, and those you don't lose are black, right?
That's it. When you were doing this stuff, did you still maintain the day job?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I did all the things that, people do these days to kind of get by. I mean, I was getting up at 3 a.m. and training before work. A lot of times I was running at lunchtime and just doing a sponge bath, in the sink. I mean, this is back in the day when you had to wear a suit, like, to work. So I'll never forget, I had in my little cubicle, I had a hanger, and I just take off my suit, kind of duck behind my cubicle, take off my suit, put on my running gear. And then after I finished, I'd just go into to the bathroom and like take a quick sponge bath, and then put my suit back on and go back to work.
Yeah, that's insane. That's awesome. I love how, like, I know the type, right? Me, you, and also recently I had on Joe DeSena, the founder of Spartan Up, and like we're all just like a little bit out of our mind, and just like the way you speak, like when you speak about doing the crazy stuff, like you don't this isn't really that crazy. You love this stuff, and it's just awesome. I love it.
Well, I mean, Joe is, he's amazing. I mean, I was putting on a 50-mile race in Bear Mountain, New York, which you might know Bear Mountain. And I mean, that crazy mofo, he shows up at the start. He's not even trained. He's just like, yeah, I just, drove all night to get here. And I want to do a 50-miler, and I ran half of it with him. He's just, balls to the wall. I mean, he, he just threw himself at it. It took him a long time, but he got to the finish line.
He's out of his mind.
Yeah, he's out of his, in a good way. And every, he's a maverick, not only with racing and, with his, his adventures in business. Yeah. I've done a lot of the Spartan races, and I know his whole, the whole organization he's built.
Yeah. You're a maverick.
I think, we're kind of cut from the same mindset as well as you are. We're, kind of fearless. Yeah. Like, what the hell? We're going to, if you fail boldly, but at least try.
Yeah. 100%. When did you transition from making this your life and like doing this full time, and obviously writing the books and so forth? Like, how long was the window from when, and then you left the kind of the corporate world behind and went all in on this?
It was about 10 years. I kept, living this dual existence, this split personality. So I was, racing, doing these 100-milers and things on the weekends, and then showing up to work on Monday morning, holding my own, because I didn't want to let my obligation. I didn't want to be a flake at work. Yeah. So I was kind of killing myself. And, I wanted to write a book, just to write a book, like, like a bucket list item. Like I wanted to swim with sharks. So I swam with sharks. I wanted to jump out of an airplane. So I skydove. Of course. And then I'm like, I want to write a book. So I wrote my first book, and I thought, I checked that off the list. And I thought, if 5 of my buddies buy this book, I'll be lucky. And the next day it was a New York Times bestseller.
And for the audience, let me just hold it up right here, because I'm an advocate for it. I'm a diehard fan, and it played a major impact in my life as well. And this was your first book.
First book. Yep.
Obviously, in a little bit, we'll get to, you just released another one and so forth, but continue. This is unbelievable. A classic.
Yeah. And like I said, I didn't mean it. I call myself an accidental New York Times bestseller. I just wanted to write a book. And then, based on the success, I thought, there's something here. There's, I'm writing about some obscure, guy running through the, hundreds of miles through the mountains, but there's power in that message somehow, and it resonates with people. 100%. So at that point I thought, quit your job and throw yourself at this crazy world of ultra marathoning and just see if you can make a go of it, because it's really what you love.
100%. Your mindset is absolutely bulletproof. I know it's public knowledge that in regards to you, and I'm not 100% sure how to say this, so I'll just be straight up. I wanted to ask you about either not producing or producing a little bit less of lactate threshold. What exactly is the deal with that? What does that even mean? Because I know the audience might want to know.
Yeah. So when you work out, I guess the best analogy is to imagine doing dumbbell curls. So, you're curling some heavy weight, and, you might do 3 or 4 reps, and you start feeling that burning sensation in your muscle, and it kind of starts tensing up. And that's the accumulation of lactic acid. And then if you put the weight down, you kind of shake your arm out and you wait a minute or two, you can pick it up and you start doing reps again. And then that same phenomena happens, like 3 or 4 reps into it, you start feeling that burning. I just don't produce lactic acid. Actually, I produce lactic acid. My body just clears it out of my system really quickly. So one of the limiting factors for endurance running is, the buildup of lactic acid. And that's kind of when your legs start feeling rubbery and heavy, and, your pace starts slowing down. I just don't have that happening to me.
Yeah. So that's a physical component that you don't maybe deal with like other people do. Obviously, I know from experience, and a lot more because you've done a lot of crazy stuff, that this stuff is really all this, the mindset.
Yeah, it is. I mean, every endurance athlete has a better ability to clear lactic acid from their system just by, by working out. They think I might have some hereditary thing that, allows me to do it even more efficiently, but none of this would manifest unless I worked out pretty damn hard. Like, unless I push myself, you'd never know that I had this ability. So, there might be hundreds of people with this latent ability that never really figure out they have it because they never really try that hard.
It's a great point. Yeah, I love that. I feel like when it comes to ultras, this might not be accurate, but for me, you put those on the map because, like you said, like today, it's a trendy thing to do to run a marathon or ultras or what's the third one? Ironmans.
Ironman. Yep.
Yeah. So, but
And and obstacle course racing as well, like a Spartan, the
yeah,
Spartan beast. Yeah, I mean, the same
yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah.
But I feel like you put these on the map a little bit. Like you kind of were talking about them and the book and so forth before most of pop culture knew what they were. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, the first year I ran an ultra marathon, there was something like 3,500 finishers in North America, and in 2019 there was
How
something
many?
like 3,500, so
Okay.
3,500,
Yeah.
and that's 1993, and then by 2019 there was something like 300,000. So the numbers have just gone through the roof, and a lot of it is because I took the message mainstream. I'm not the only one running ultra marathons, but I was like getting mainstream press.
Yeah.
And so it was just reaching more people. I always took the path that I thought, if you do all this stuff in a vacuum, good for you. I was, you can pound your chest. Yeah, you're superhuman. You ran 100 miles. But if you can use that to inspire others and get other people into it, then that's a higher calling. So it's always been my charter, like spread the word about this, running and ultra marathoning, because I think there's no downside. Anyone who gets into running, their health is better. You're just a better human when you're a runner. You've got more energy, you're more available to other people. You appreciate the environment more because you're out there breathing the air, so you want clean air. So that was kind of one of my missions was, let's grow the sport. Let's get more people into running.
Yeah. 100%. Beautifully said. And I heard you talk about this also, and it's very relatable to me because when I started running, it was at a pivotal moment in my life where I kind of needed an outlet for myself to put myself through war to prove to myself and show myself what I'm made of, so to speak. And I heard you talk about something similar where like putting yourself in such uncomfortable situations shows you like who you are and what you're made of, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, training for a marathon and an ultra marathon and running an ultra marathon, it builds character, right? For sure, but it also reveals character. You learn about yourself. A few other sports hold a mirror up to you the way running does. I mean,
There's no
running,
lying to yourself in a marathon or an ultra.
yeah, I mean, it forces you to confront your weaknesses and your shortcomings. And I mean, all of us have had this, my friend calls it the come to Jesus moment, where you're like, I can't take another step. Like, I can't keep going. And somehow you pull yourself together, and, with grit and perseverance, you get through it. And that teaches you a lot.
100%. And as a mindset coach, I have my tools and techniques, but I'd love to hear yours and just pick your brain for a second. When you get that voice in your head, because we all do, no matter what. It's funny. I also recently had one of the greatest female runners ever on, Dina Castor.
Cat. Oh yeah. She's
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
she's phenomenal. And she was talking about, she goes, nobody's exempt from that voice in your head around mile 20 or so forth. People just have different ways of dealing with it. I'm curious, what's one tool or technique that you can suggest to the audience to deal with that voice in your head? Because this isn't only applicable for running, it's really for life.
Yeah. I mean, people say, what do you think about when you hear that voice? And my answer is, I don't think. That's when you get yourself in trouble, when you think. So I don't think, I do. And by that, I mean, I literally just think about one thing, and that is taking my next footstep to the best of my ability. So don't think about how far you've got to go. Don't reflect on the past. Just be in the here and now, the present moment of time, and take your next footstep to the best of your ability. And then your next footstep to the best of your ability. And literally, you put the blinders on to the future, and it takes a lot of discipline to stay in that moment, stay in the present. But if you can live in the here and now, you can get through almost anything. I mean, I've been in that state literally when I ran, across America. So I ran 3,000 miles from LA to New York City. I remember for 4 days straight, all I could think about is taking my next step. So for 12 hours of running, I was just saying one thing to myself: take your next step, take your next step, take your next step.
And that's a metaphor for life too, especially
It
when
really is.
you're
Yeah.
going through some tough times. Like everybody will at some point. You know, what can you focus on? Your attitude. We can't always control the hand we're dealt, but you can take that next step.
Yeah. I mean, that's all we can keep doing, right? Is moving forward. And I think it's when we stop taking that next step that leads to problems.
100%. This is unbelievable. I'm having so much fun right now. The truth of the matter is, I could talk to you all day. This is great, but I want to be obviously respectful for the time and so forth. I know you're fascinated, as am I, to how far we can push ourselves, both mentally and physically. Have you pushed yourself to the absolute brink?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I tried to do this run called the Badwater Ultramarathon, which is 135 miles across Death Valley in the
Familiar.
middle of summer, I got extremely dehydrated and I threw my electrolytes out of balance. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in a hotel room and my crew was surrounding me. I said, what's going on? And they said, wow, we were driving around the desert all night looking for you. And we saw some shoes on the side of the road and we found you. You had passed out and just fallen over on the side of the road. And we put you in the car and we drove you to the nearest hotel. And you've been asleep for 6 hours. We cranked up the AC and yeah, that's how we found you. So, I've pushed myself to collapse.
I asked the question and you gave the exact answer. The answer is yes, you push yourself to the
Yeah.
brink. And I remember the name of that from, I was reading the Dave Goggins book. I think he ran the same race.
Yeah. Yep. I've been out there with David a couple occasions. He's running a couple occasions. Yeah.
Yeah. What a community, right? You like Goggins and Desenia and so forth. It's awesome.
Yeah. And Joe's running it as well. And so is Jesse, actually.
Oh, he is?
Yeah. Jesse's run it before too. The Badwater. Yeah.
Yeah. What's
I
it?
mean, I've done it 10 times. Those guys haven't taken it quite that extreme, but they've done it. Yeah.
What are the logistics of that race?
So it's Badwater is the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere. It's 282 feet below sea level, and 135 miles from that lowest point is the highest point in the contiguous U.S., which is Mount Whitney. And the idea is to run from the lowest point to the highest point, and right in the middle of those two is something called Death Valley, and they hold the race in July, so it's the middle of summer, and it's ungodly. I mean, a couple of the years I've run it, it's gotten up to 130 degrees. So it's otherworldly being out there trying to run 135 miles through that stuff.
Ungodly and
It's
otherworldly.
it's unholy. Yeah. I mean, it's ruthless out there.
Ruthless. This is terrific. Another thing that you said that hit home to me, and it's kind of something we talked about earlier, but just worded a little differently. Without war, you don't know if you're a coward or a hero.
Yeah, I think it's quite true. And I think, running a marathon gives you that war, right?
100%.
As we talked about before, you learn, are you a coward or are you a hero? When things get tough, and the enemy's winning, what do? Do you stop and whimper and give up, or you keep fighting?
And I want to say something because you make me feel real comfortable right now, and vulnerability is sexy. So I'm just gonna be straight up. When I ran my first marathon in New York City, I was doing very well the first half, but as they teach you in training, whether this is right or not, it's just what I did. They say not to surpass 20 miles when you're training for your first marathon, whatever the case may be. And so I never had. And so once I got to my like 1920 in New York City, I started to fade. And like, yes, my body was beaten up, but I also am self-aware enough to know that my mind has never really been through that type of hell either. And so I crossed the finish line. I ran a 4:12, 4 hours, 12 minutes, which by most civilian standards for the first marathon they never ran before is not bad. But I remember being pissed off. Like, I know I could have broken four. And I was mad. And like some of my family members were looking at me a little weird after because like in their eyes, like this is such a big accomplishment. I only just started running, but I knew in my heart of hearts, like I didn't win. I won, but like I know I could have done better. And then I became very obsessive, and I wanted to break four, and I ended up breaking it in San Francisco with 3:53, which is a very tough course. And then I was 3:39 in Philly. But it's so true. Like when you're going through the war, it's to anyone out there, whether it be running or something. I highly suggest to put yourself in a situation where you really have to dig deep and find out what you're made of. And the cool part is even if you don't have the success you want, you can build on it, right? And you can get better, so to speak, and you can learn how to become even more mentally tough and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I literally think everyone should run a marathon, and I know a lot of the listeners, are saying, "Oh, I could never do that," and that's why you have to do it. It'll prove to you that you're better than you think you are, and you can go further than you think you can. So I think, that the mindset of a marathoner is just different than someone who's not a runner. They've been through hell, they've fought that war, and it teaches you so much, and it's just a beautiful, it's a beautiful rebirth, I think, and that's why I say, sign up and run a marathon. Especially if you think you can't do it.
A beautiful rebirth. That, my friend, is beautiful. And it's so true. Like when my first marathon, I just wanted to finish. And then obviously, now I'm trying to do something weird, like, 310 or 320 or something like that. But I couldn't agree more. Run a marathon. For those of you out there that think we're out of our mind, and maybe we are a little bit, but we mean it in a positive way. It'll change you for life, not just running, but it'll help reframe what you know to be capable of for yourself. And it kind of gives you a new frame of reference. So I love that you said that. Of all the things that you've done, all the adventure journeys and the running and so forth, what pops out as by far the craziest?
How long do we have for this interview?
I know.
I mean,
one.
Running, I ran a marathon to the South Pole one time, and that's never been done before, and it had never been done, prior. So that was insane. I ran 525 kilometers along the ancient Silk Road between Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan, and that was a crazy ass experience. I could go on and on, but I ran for 24 hours around Sao Paulo, Brazil, with these Brazilians. That was pretty wild. We were all drunk by the end.
That's awesome.
I ran 24 hours on a treadmill on a 2-story platform hoisted above Times Square. You probably didn't know this. Yeah, with all those jumbotrons filming me the entire 24 hours as I'm running on this platform.
When was this?
This was maybe 2010. I can't really remember that. I can't remember the year, but it was a fundraiser for prostate cancer, and they put me on this platform. And I'll never forget, the only thing on this platform was this treadmill, and on the back was this little, those little camping, those little potties, those camping toilets. Those are the only 2 things I could do, is run or use the head.
That's incredible. This is nuts. I did not know that one. You could have said that in the beginning when I said what's something that people might not know about you. That's awesome. When did you write the last book? I know it just got released, but was this on your mind for quite some time?
It kind of just popped to my mind. Like my literary agent came to me and said, you want to write another book? And I thought, I don't know, like I want to make sure there's something I could say. And I thought, tell the story about where you're at now. This latest book, it's called The Runner's High, is it's somewhat of a sequel to Ultramarathon Man. So, here's the book. And, as you talked about, Ultramarathon Man was a coming of age book, right? Where I kind of learned about this crazy world of ultramarathoning. Yeah. And The Runner's High is, 3 decades later, 25 years later, what's changed? How have I changed? How is the sport itself? We talked about the sport itself, growing as well. And also this is a more inward reflecting book. It's more about the mindset of a runner. So, this book is more, it's more, I don't know, intellectual, I guess you could say. It's more heady. It's more getting in my head and getting in my soul. And I think that's why it's doing so well, is because it's not just a story about one guy. It's a story that any runner can relate to. The thoughts, the feelings, the emotions that we experience when we're out there doing these things. You kind of touched on some of those emotions during this podcast, but the book really delves in heavily into kind of the spiritual aspects as well as the physical aspects.
Yeah. I'm going to be reading it at the end of this week, and I can't wait to give you feedback on it. I'm so excited. Is it on Audible?
It's on Audible as well. Yep. So
Is it your
you can listen.
voice?
No, damn, you know that when the book was coming out is right at the height of the pandemic, because I was going to record it and all of the recording studios closed down. And the professional, book readers, they have like studios in their basement kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't have a studio at my house, but so I couldn't do it. But it's not my voice. But the guy did a decent job reading it.
Okay, good, good. I wanted to ask you because a lot of times I talk about like community and support. And, I recently had an Olympic gold swimmer on, and she was talking about one of the coolest things that she attributes a lot to her success is the power of community and her inner circle and support. And I know like me and you were having a couple laughs on here today about like Goggins and Joe and so forth. And, birds of a feather, we all have that same mindset, so to speak, but we're not next door neighbors. So I'm wondering, like, because you just think on a different frequency, so to speak, like, is it hard for you to have a ton of friends who can match like your mindset, so to speak? Is that a weird question?
No, I think it's a very good question. And I don't know if it's because of, what I do or, that ultra marathoning is not a really mainstream sport, but I don't have a lot of friends. I have a couple really close friends, and yeah, they are ultra marathoners. But I'm an introvert by nature. So I've never been surrounded by a lot of people. I'm more of a, a loner, and I prefer to run by myself. I certainly enjoy like group runs and things, but I'm very much an introvert. So I prefer my quiet alone time, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. And it might surprise you that I'm actually introvert as well. When I started my CLS brand and put myself out there a lot more, obviously I got more comfortable with doing stuff like this and, lives and stuff like that. But I'm also an introvert. So I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, I never would have. Well, I think what we are, it's called an ambivert. So, someone who's ambidextrous can like throw with their left or their right hand,
Yes.
or they can like kick. So a psychologist said, what you do is you can turn it on when you need to, but your normal state is very much of an introvert. But if you have to turn on the extroverted side, you can.
I love it. Another thing that you said that is so relatable to me, and I'm not sure if it's a gift or a curse. Wondering what you think is, I don't think both of us believe too much in moderation. If you love something, you're all in. What are your thoughts on that?
I think moderation is boring.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, it's all or nothing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I imagine that you carry that over in other aspects of life, not just running.
I think runners are, compulsive by nature, some more so than others. But yeah, I mean, this Runner's High is my fifth book, and writing a book is I think you had I don't know if have you written a book?
Not yet. Working on it right
Not
now.
yet. I like that. Yeah, I think it's as tough a challenge as any ultra marathon. It's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. But I think that it's really gratifying if you can write a good book.
Yeah. And you have such an amazing story to tell, and you're inspiring so many. So obviously it makes perfect sense for you to write the book and so forth. So I really appreciate that. What's been the biggest change over the years with running? Obviously, you're not as young as you once were, even though it's relatively just a number. So maybe you're not as fast as you once were, but anything else come to mind that's really changed over the last 15, 20 years since you've really been pushing yourself to the limits?
Yeah, I mean, running back in the 70s and 80s, it was a bunch of you know, basically white guys running really fast and racing. And since then, running's become much more democratic. I mean, you saw like with the New York City Marathon, you saw, I mean, there's the elites that are up in the front, but there's people of all walks of life. So it's also, now there's half as many women running marathons as men, and more women run half marathons than men. So it's no longer a completely white male sport at all. And that I think is really something refreshing. The other thing is that, a lot of people, although, you and I race, most runners never sign up for a race. So there's something like 75 million people that identify as being a runner in the US, but only like 20, I think 15 or 20 million ever will sign up to run like even a 5K. So most people just run for the pure enjoyment or, for the fitness, whatever it is. that they do run for, but most people do not, they're not racers. They just run for the, just for running itself.
Understood. And since I became a runner, right, because I signed up for New York City and so what, I've surrounded myself with a lot of people in the community, especially in New York City. And it's such a beautiful community. Like, it's just a different breed. And everyone's so supportive. And like, if I'm out there on a run and like I see a perfect stranger in Manhattan, like coming, like usually give each other a thumbs up, or like I see you, like great job. Like, you never know what mile they're on, whatever the case would be, but they're out there and they're doing their thing. And it's just a mutual respect.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're giving me the chills now, because I so miss running in Manhattan. It's been a couple of years now because of the pandemic, and New York City. I don't know. I think I've run New York City maybe 12 or 13 times. It's got to be the greatest. I mean, other than Athens, it's the greatest marathon on earth.
So special.
Yeah, it's the largest and definitely the most international.
Yeah. What's your marathon PR, if you don't mind me asking, Dean?
It's not very fast. It's 2:42.
That's not very fast, you.
I've never trained like to run a marathon. Like the 50th marathon of when I did 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days. The last marathon was New York City, and I ran it in 3 hours flat, 3 hours and I think 28 seconds. So, with 49 prior marathons on my legs in 49 days, I'm not that much faster, trying to PR.
Yeah, that's an amazing accomplishment. Real quickly, in regards to that one, because that one's very well documented, what made you want to do that specifically? And there's a whole documentary about that as well, correct?
Yeah, there's a whole, yep, yeah. It's just Ultramarathon Man is the name of the documentary.
How does the audience find that?
Yeah, I just, I was at the Boston Marathon, and you know how they have the race expo, and I was listening to a speaker, and the guy was saying he was part of the 50 state club. And he was describing like, yeah, I ran a marathon in every state. And I thought, wow, I didn't even know every state had a marathon. And I asked him, how long did it take you? And he said, oh, it took me 8.5 years to finish them all. And I thought, Jesus, I don't know if I'll be alive in 8.5 years. And I just thought, I wonder if it can be done in 50 straight days. It just seemed like an insane adventure, like, an expedition, just to see all the states, first of all, let alone run a marathon in each of them. And so I thought, give it a go. A lot of people said there's no way, like it can't be done. And I thought the only way to figure out if it could be done is to try it. So 50 days later, I made it, I finished the 50th marathon.
I imagine with your personality, when people say it can't be done, that's a trigger that says, we'll see about that.
Yeah, I was feeling some of that for sure. Yeah.
If people wanted to watch that documentary, how can they find it?
It's called Ultramarathon Man. So you just Google Ultramarathon Man.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, people ask, how do I find you? Someone said, if you type in Dean in Google, I'm like the first Dean that comes up.
Good.
So, you can see movies, website, social media, all that stuff.
Yeah. I have to ask you real quick, because this is this is a huge component when it comes to fitness and so forth. How important is nutrition to you?
It's huge. And I used to neglect it. I mean, I'll never live down that story from my first book where I was running a 200-mile 12-person relay race.
The pizza?
Solo, yeah. But I'm out in the middle of nowhere on this backcountry road in the middle of the night, but I had a cell phone and a credit card, and I had a pizza delivered to me. So I'm no longer ordering pizzas on the roadside. But that said, that first book is published, I think, in 22 languages. And like when I travel around the world and do like, book talks or like like a fun run with a group of people in Italy or, the UK or Australia, inevitably we'll come around a corner and there'll be a pizza delivery guy there. It's like a gag. Like people just say, oh, Dean's coming to run with us. Let's get a pizza delivered while we're out running. Even if we're running like a 5K, around the, it happened in Central Park. I was doing a run with Paragon Sports. You probably know Paragon.
Yeah.
In New York. And we were like by Tavern on the Green, and there's a pizza guy going, hey, you guys are the runners. Here's your pizza.
Tavern on the Green. That's great.
But I don't do pizzas anymore. I'm pretty much a clean eater now. Yeah.
Understood. Same. And it's amazing how much of a difference it's made, just in overall mood, everything.
Yeah. One of my mentors is a guy named Jack LaLanne. And he said to me, Dean, if man makes it, don't eat it. And if it tastes good, spit it out.
You live by that?
A little, I
Right.
mean, I try to get my food to taste good, but if I can't pick it from a tree or dig it from the earth or catch it with my hands, I don't eat it.
Yeah, I love that. We'll wrap it up with these final two questions, just quick answers. For anyone going through adversity, whether it be an ultra or business or relationship, anything, just life in general, what do you think the most significant attribute to possess is to be able to push through adversity?
Laugh, laugh at it, laugh at adversity, fucking laugh at it.
I
Bring
love
it.
that.
Just have some fun with it and celebrate the highs of life and the lows. Have a full emotional range in your life. The higher the highs and the lower the lows, celebrate them all.
And I saw how you just lit up like a Christmas tree, like you got so passionate about that because I'm sure you've been through some shit, as I know, and we all have. You got to laugh at it.
Embrace it. Embrace that shit, man. Yeah, when it gets tough, embrace it. Yeah.
You said. And lastly, aside from the mentor that you just mentioned, who is one big source of inspiration, whether it be a character from a movie, a book, a friend, anyone in the world that's really inspired you over the years?
That'd just be my dad. He's such a good guy and he's always been there for me. It'd be my dad.
Best answer possible. My dad's my best friend in the world. Love that you said that. The audience is going to fall in love with you in 2 seconds. It's been so much fun, Dean. I really respect and appreciate you. Where can they catch up with you? Where can they support you? Where can they hang out with you? Where do you hang out the most?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram more than I should be these days, but just Google Dean and you pick up a copy of A Runner's High. I think you'd really enjoy it. I mean, just before we got on this interview, I got an email from a guy who said that he was going to read a couple of chapters of the book last night before he went to bed. And he's like, 6 hours later, I closed the last page. And then he said, and then I got up. It was the middle of the night, but I just had to go running. So, if you need some motivation or energy, you check out A Runner's High.
100%. And for the 250,000 downloads that we have so far with the podcast, if you believe me, should you check out what Dean has going on, specifically the brand new book? The answer is absolutely. I only collaborate with the best. Dean is someone I respect so much, and he's just full of so much inspiration. Like I said, I could speak to you all day, Dean. This has been so much fun. I just want to say to you, you don't shy away from your challenges as they've shaped you. It's something I personally find so relatable and liberating. You are the definition of resilience, grit, and heart as you continue to push the body and the mind to new heights. You've proven that you are absolutely limitless when you challenge yourself and commit. Your records and accomplishments are remarkable and the stuff of legend. But more importantly, your mindset and perspective is absolutely bulletproof. You're a role model and an icon to anyone coming up today with big goals. I could personally guarantee your best is yet to come. You're someone I admire. I appreciate, respect. I love so much. Keep setting those records, and you have my word right here, right now. This will absolutely not be the last time that you and I collaborate. We're definitely going to hook up for a run.
I look forward to sharing some footsteps together, and I wish you luck in Chicago, brother.
Thank you so much for your time, Dean. This was so much fun.
Strength and endurance.
That's it. Take care, brother.